The Idaho trial for the brutal unalivings of Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin will not be held in Moscow, Idaho, or in Latah County. Judge John Judge has signed the order to grant a change of venue, but he's not named where that new venue will be. Judge ruled that while the media coverage has been everywhere, Moscow, where these crimes happened, is the emotional epicenter of the crimes, and therefore could hinder Bryan Kohberger's ability to get a fair trial. The risk of potential prejudice, he said, is high. There are approximately 21,000 potential jurors in Moscow or Latah County, of which about 6,000 would be used for the jury pool. Judge agreed with the defense that there are just too many possible connections to the local police or to the university. So while it's not possible to have a jury pool that's perhaps less exposed to the media, he agrees with the defense that the crime shattered the residents' sense of security and devastated the community, and that sense of emotion and fear and anger potentially could prohibit Bryan Kohberger from getting a fair trial. This move meets the legal standard of reasonable likelihood of having Kohberger's right to a fair trial violated. He also agreed with the defense that there would be community pressure on the jury in Latah County to convict because of those number of connections to the police and to the university. Remember, the president of the university has already written a book convicting Bryan Kohberger. I mean, in his book about the University of Idaho, he talks about the events of the slayings of the Idaho4 and has already assumed Bryan Kohberger's guilt. Judge left it to the Idaho Supreme Court to decide where the trial will be heard. He's also elected to be removed from the case, where he could have chosen to stay on. This is going to create some delays as a new judge will have to be appointed, and the Idaho Supreme Court will decide where the case will be held. Now, despite the largest percentage of media coverage outside of Latah County in Ada County, and sometimes that coverage is even more than the coverage in Latah County, the Idaho Supreme Court will likely decide Ada County, in other words, the capital city of Boise, the same place that the Lori Vallow and the Chad Daybell trials were moved to. He also apparently agreed with the defense that although most people will answer yes to the question on the screen, can you set aside what you know about the case and be fair and impartial, there are subconscious leanings that the potential juror might not recognize. The data also shows that most potential jurors overestimate their ability to be fair. Now, this is a light win for the defense and for Bryan Kohberger. Two reasons. The defense can now bring up anything that Judge Judge has already ruled on with the new judge, except for those rulings that involve due process. So anything to do with the way the trial is conducted, or even some of Taylor's objections to the way the grand jury decided, etc., those cannot be re-argued. But what can be brought as evidence, even if it's been decided already, can and will likely be readdressed with the new judge. The second and perhaps more effective in moving the case, especially to Ada County, especially to Boise, is that because Boise is the capital and the largest city in Idaho, it has a population more likely to vote against the DP. This is the major reason why the BK defense team wanted the trial to move to Ada County in the first place. Even if the defendant is pronounced guilty or found guilty, the fact is he is less likely, after a guilty verdict, to receive the DP, the D penalty, in Ada County. However, Chad Daybell received it, so Lori Vallow, it wasn't an option in her case. We'll have to see how this trial progresses. It is still scheduled for June of 2025. That's in about, 9 months. But that also could be delayed. One of the reasons for that June date is that Moscow would have less of a student population there and perhaps more opportunity for those coming from out of town to find hotels, etc. That is no longer a consideration because they're just going to have to find what works in Boise, and there's no high student population to be worried about. The safety and security in Moscow, the judge said, was not appropriate or not enough for holding the trial there. The Gonçalves family issued a statement saying, why did it take Judge John Judge a year to decide that? Well, he had to wait for the presentation of evidence. He can't just make that decision on his own. A judge is the referee in a trial, and he cannot rule unless there's evidence brought to him. I mean, there are some things he can rule on and does, but for things like change of venue, he has to hear the evidence first and then make a ruling. So why did he wait a year? Well, because this hearing just took place a few weeks ago. I believe 2 weeks ago. A little over. So it's not something that he just sat on and, decided just now. There are going to be lots of motions brought. Some we will hear about, some we won't, because there's still a gag order in place. By the way, a new judge can reconsider that gag order as well. So we have a lot of motions coming up. We will keep you informed. On the road of life, please drive kind. Thank you.